Alright boys, let's do a big ol' Western Conference video, and the ones for the teams that I have not talked about yet are going to be a little longer, whereas teams I've already touched on, it might be more of a specific thing for like a minute. Also, some of these were done a few days ago, so if there's like a recent game I don't talk about, for example, the insanity of Warriors Thunder last night, that's the reason. I didn't want to keep pushing this video back, you know? I'm going to start with the Nuggets. They just look like a well-oiled machine pretty much. I think it's just most impressive that they've been this good defensively out of the jump, because they could have been lazy defensively, and they said, nope, we're not at all. And so, whether it's two to the ball or level Jokic at the level of the screen, like, I think it was a lot of that against OKC, or, you know, they started out like that against the Lakers, but then they went into more Jokic drop, but then they mixed in some still, like, heavy rotations, clogging up the paint as well, and their closeouts have been good, communication, all of it. It's been really good. Offensively, we know what they are. Now, they did lose to the Wolves, and I am going to talk about that game when we get to the Wolves. But yeah, that's the Nuggets. And as far as the Clippers, I mean, look, I just did the whole video on the James Harden trade. We will see what the chemistry looks like. We will see how often the big three are screening for each other. And hopefully Westbrook, Terrence Mann, and Norm Powell can keep the catch and drives and transition opportunities enough. We'll see who ends up handling it the most in fourth quarters, and we'll also see who's the most comfortable with catch and shoots and all that. So let's go to the Pelicans, and I think their recent game against the Thunder, specifically the fourth quarter, kind of sums up all of my feelings about this team. Not just in what happened on the court, but also with who was not playing in Ingram, and obviously we don't want guys playing when they're hurt and stuff. It's just, you know, that's been the story with this team. You know, can CJ, Zion, Ingram play enough together? Anyway, in that fourth quarter, we saw a whole bunch of CJ pick and roll. We saw CJ making pull-up threes, step-back threes, as OKC was, at least for a bit, they're having Chet in like a high drop. Then we saw a couple times where like he's making a skip pass to Matt Ryan for a corner three, or skip to Herb Jones, who's then doing a catch and drive from the corner. And then eventually Zion had a couple of plays where he was basically just going at Lou Dort in a one-on-one. A couple of them being at the top of the key, high post area, which I think has been a really interesting spot to see Zion operate from so far, like around the free throw line. Because, of course, you know, he's a good enough ball handler to where if he just gets the angle on you from there, I mean, who the hell can deal with that guy going downhill, you know? To be clear, it was a pretty rough start for them in that game. But then we saw a play where Zion and CJ played off of each other, where it was like Zion at the elbow, high post, whatever, hands it off to CJ. CJ hits a step-back three, and, you know, they ended up winning the game. It was kind of like the individual talents and then the specific times where they play off of each other, which is what I think you really want out of this team. As for their defense, they are towards the top of the league in opponent three-point attempts per game right now. Obviously, small sample size. I was watching that Knicks, and just to clarify, that means that they are allowing a lot of opponent three-point attempts. And they were being, like, decently aggressive with, like, bringing two to the ball or whatever, you know, higher up on screens, rotations behind it, that sort of thing. On top of your given stuff of, like, just general switches across the perimeter, Herb starting on Brunson, and while the Knicks were not able to kill them from three, the Warriors did have more success. Granted, Steph also just went crazy, and yeah, that's going to happen to you sometimes. My very early take on Jordan Hawkins is that dude is not afraid to shoot. Now let's get to Phoenix. This is going to be a short one because I wish I had more to say about the Suns, but it's just like, look, we have not seen a single game of KD, Book, and Beal. Booker's only played 2 games, so they've mostly just been a Kevin Durant surrounded by role players team, and we like those role players. It's just, if that's what it's been so far, then the only formula to win like that is you're like amazing on defense, and then KD carries you on the other end, and that's all I got. Like I said, it's a short one. Although, you know what? Shout out to Eric Gordon at 34 years old. The dude can still drop 20 in any random game, so that's cool. Now let's get to the Grizzlies. So, of course, they do not have Ja's rim pressure, Steven Adams' screen setting, offensive rebounding, or passing off of rolls or little handoff actions. They don't have Brandon Clark's screen setting and floaters. They do not have Santi Aldama as a skilled big, at least so far this season. Kennard has missed a couple games and he can shoot. And now they're 0-6. It has not been a good time. And so it's been a lot of Desmond Bane. And okay, for the most part, I think Bane has been what you would have hoped for. I mean, he's still getting all of his signature one-screen actions where he's sprinting around him and then getting into a three, a drive, making the next play for somebody, whatever. It's been probably a little bit more pick and roll, some double screens up top for him, crazy plays where he'll go from like one side of the court to the other in an off-ball action, and then he didn't shoot well against the Nuggets, but overall Bane has been what you would have wanted to see so far. Jaren's inside game, his drives, his post game and all that has been a mixed bag. I mean, against the Nuggets, he looked like how he looked at the tail end of last season when it looked like his post game was going to a different level where like he's sizing up Aaron Gordon and then it's a crossover, gets his shoulder into him, hits him with a hook shot that drops in, or he's taking Jokic off the dribble for something, or he's powering through like Zeke Naji on a back down and then he scores. And then you had the game right before against the Wizards where he's trying to do similar things to like Gafford or Denny or Kuzma, and it's what I say sometimes with Jaren, post-ups, face-ups, whatever, it's like, it's just a bunch of bodies crashing into each other, and eventually Jaren's going to throw up a 12-footer. And in that game, he didn't have as much success. But then he was great in their last one against the Blazers, and I mean, hell, in that first game of the season, he blocked Zion like a million times. I know Zion had a couple of crazy dunks that were huge highlights, but obviously defensively, Jaren's going to keep being Jaren. As far as Marcus, I don't know if I have numbers to back this up. It feels like he's running more pick and roll with the Grizzlies than he was in the Celtics, which I guess makes sense given the amount of guys they have out right now. And yeah, NBA.com says he's averaging 5 pick and rolls a game, which means he's averaging way more than 5 because they're very strict with what they consider a pick and roll. They have gotten torched from 3 the last 2 games against the Jazz and the Mavs. And I do think if you look at some of the threes they've given up, like there's been some contested ones, like Jordan Clarkson step back corner 3 over Xavier Tillman on a switch, for example. But then you've also got like the first 3 that the Mavericks made in that game where it's like Grant Williams screens for Luka, Marcus and Tillman go to Luka, and then it's got to be Tillman making a mad dash all the way to Grant on the top of the key. He makes that 3. It's like, I don't know what to do with this. And for what it's worth, I thought defensively against the Nuggets, they were much better, where like you had like Marcus switching onto Jokic, facing him up in the post, being physical, whatever. Okay, now let's go to the Lakers. So we have actually been seeing some more LeBron AD pick and roll. That's fun. With my favorite moment being against the Clippers, where LeBron got Zubats on a switch and everybody on NBA Twitter knew what was about to happen. The FU3, of course. I do want to talk about Christian Wood's defense for a bit because they've been putting him out there with AD. I mean, he played basically the entire fourth quarter, the Magic win. He was out there for like big parts of the Clippers game. Similar stuff with the Suns game as he had a number of good possessions, either switched onto KD or helping on KD. Christian Wood's been pulling off some defensive plays, man. Blocking Zubats from behind, with like AD around there. Switched onto Kawhi one time, held up like pretty well on one play. One time in the Magic game, switched onto Franz and he held up pretty okay. Obviously, he's a floor spacer. He's been able to get some opportunistic cuts on as well. Like Christian Wood and AD and LeBron, like that trio has worked so far, man. Max Christie finally got some minutes versus the Clippers. We will see if Darvin Ham leans on him more for, on-ball defense. Of course, they could use Vanderbilt and him coming back eventually for more on-ball defense or just anything defense with Vando, really. Now we go to the Mavericks, where Grant Williams has pretty much not missed a three-pointer so far. And of course, you're going to get your catch-and-shoot like corner stuff off of Kyrie and Luka existing, but Grant, he's been setting a lot of on-ball screens, and also a good amount of these Derek Lively rolls to the rim. Like it pulls the defender in just enough, because of course the threat of Luka making that pass to Lively. Grant Williams is getting some of his threes off of that. He's also getting little like pump fakes, 1 or 2 dribbles to the sides off, some trailing threes here and there, random little like off-ball screens, then he'll flow into, just camp out to the three-point line, basically. Like it's just enough movement on top of creators around Grant for him to just be in the perfect situation as a shooter right now. And then defensively, I mean, I was watching that Bulls fourth quarter. I mean, you had a couple possessions where Luka held up really well on DeRozan in a 1v1, Derek Lively, dropping back and just kind of walling off Javon Carter, and then Tim Hardaway Jr. is coming in to steal that pass meant for Vooch, or Lively switching on to Levine, getting like a really good contest on like a pull-up 2 on him. He had one great contest at the rim where he just went straight up on Levine. The Mavericks, their defensive rating got messed up because they just played the Nuggets, and yeah, that's just kind of going to happen to you. But I think there have been some signs with their defense so far. As for the Warriors now, this is going to be one of the shorter ones. It's just all about Chris Paul's fit to me, because the starting 5, the chemistry on both sides for them, communication on defense, even if, they're still going to be smaller and stuff, while we still love Kevon Looney. I don't really have any questions there. Okay, Klay hit the game winner against the Kings, that's great. The Chris Paul, when he's in there with the starters, whether he's like playing, with Wiggins sitting or whatever, like he can flow with whatever random thing it needs to be. He can recognize, Steph's coming off the screen, let me throw this pass to him, whatever. The hit-ahead passes in transition. Of course, Chris Paul can make a swing pass, and also random little Steph screen for me, I screen for you, I'll flow into like a ghost screen sort of thing, pick and pop. It's all great. And then on the bench, I think the Chris Paul, Dario Saric 2-man game, the pick and rolls, pick and pops, because Saric was making a couple of threes in their recent one against the Kings, I think that can lead to the Warriors' bench lineups, which of course were a big problem for them last year. Could fix a lot of those issues. And, sometimes it's like they re-screen if the initial screen doesn't work, or Saric gets it and then he's flipping it to like Kuminga or something. I mean, Gary Payton screening for Chris as well. Like, it all just makes sense when you watch their bench just kind of operate. Moody and Kuminga can get shots from this, it's cool. Yes, Chris's shooting has not been great so far, but I think his overall impact has still been pretty big. Now I'm going to do a quick one on the Spurs, because of course I just did a video talking about Wemby's game against the Suns and stuff. I'm just going to repeat what I said in that video. Wemby figuring out that slipping screens, setting physical screens to force a switch, whatever, And then the Spurs perimeter players realizing if we just throw it in the general area code, only he can go get it. That's just going to put a lot of defenses in very tough situations. And then Zach Collins screening for him off the ball is also very fun as well. And to give you more of my thoughts on the Sohan Trey Jones thing, I think Popovich is probably just like, listen, if we need Trey Jones to stabilize the offense, he's always going to be there in the fourth quarters or whatever. Now let's go to the Wolves, the team that might have me the most confused out of anybody this season so far. So Naz Reid goes crazy in their win over Miami. They then have a disastrous second half versus Atlanta where DeJounte has an out-of-body experience and the Wolves just kind of looked shell-shocked the whole time. And then they beat the Nuggets, and they looked really impressive defensively, where you had some plays where Cat was holding up pretty okay against Jokic, and then you had Rudy helping off of Gordon and contesting at the rim really well on like MPJ, Jamal Murray. Murray shot a couple of floaters where it seemed like he could have been affected by Rudy just kind of waiting for him at the rim. One time where Gobert actually blocked Jokic at the basket, helping off of Gordon. A couple times where they collapsed really well on Jokic. Like, it was one of the few times the Nuggets have looked vulnerable at all this season so far. Granted, the Grizzlies also played them close, so don't listen to me. In that game, you also had like Jaden McDaniels blocking Jokic from behind, and and for what it's worth, before DeJounte just kind of ripped the Wolves' souls from them, in the first half, I thought the Wolves' offense looked like really good, to be honest, where you had like Cat making cross-court passes to Jaden McDaniels for corner threes when he's in the post on Jalen Johnson. Later on, he was not as successful in the post. You had Edwards running a pick and pop with Naz Reid, pick and roll, swing to Kyle Anderson, swing to Shake Milton, Kyle Anderson cuts, it's a layup for him. Like, things were just kind of working. You had like Conley, Gobert, empty corner, like DHOs that lead to lobs, or Kyle Anderson, Rudy lobs like within the 3-point line. And sure, some of their offense is going to come down to like, do Edwards and Cat make some of their tough shots, as it is for basically every team in the league, which they did not do against the Raptors. And now let's get to OKC, who have had a roller coaster of a season. You blow out the Bulls and put them into a players-only meeting on game one. Then you have an insane comeback with like 2 minutes left when you're down 10 to Cleveland, and then you get blown out by the Nuggets because they're the Nuggets. Let's get to Chet first. So offensively, I think we've already seen a mix of things. We've seen him spacing out from three, allowing them to be 5 out or 4 out, 1 in with like Giddey or J-Dub or whoever cutting or setting some sort of off-ball screen for somebody. It does not feel like they've spammed Chet screening on ball for SGA, Giddey, J-Dub, but it's definitely happened. I mean, the biggest thing that's already stuck out is like, look, he's had a couple of really good 3-point shooting games. He was just 4 for 5 against the Pistons, but also we've seen like him taking Jokic off the dribble on a catch and drive. Similar thing with like Vooch in the Bulls game. Last night against the Pelicans, one time he takes like Matt Ryan off the dribble in transition, spin move, finishes over him, pump fake, get by Zion, finish with like a layup with Herb all over you and help, Larry Nance as well. Obviously having the value of a floor spacing 5 as SGA just cooks pretty much everybody. Defensively, I mean, yeah, he's certainly been in drop, and yeah, I know in the first game against the Bulls, he got dunked on by Vooch, got dunked on by Drummond, crossed up by Drummond, and he fell over. He also had one play that I remember specifically playing drop on Levine, where he had just like a fantastic textbook, like contest at the rim, both hands up there, the whole thing. Of course, he has the 7 blocks against Cleveland, with the most impressive one to me being when he hedges on a Mitchell screen and then gets back to Mobley in the paint and then blocks him in the post, and there was a foul, they overturned it among that crazy comeback where, one of the biggest threes they had, it was like Isaiah Joe getting I think like handoff action or something from Chet, and then he's driving, and because they're 5 out, because Chet gives you this ability, Mobley goes with him, and then that's a kick out to J-Dub for one of the big threes. Yes, he was also totally overmatched against Jokic. J-Dub and Cason Wallace look exactly how you would want them to look. Giddey has had a little bit of a weird season so far, just in finishing with like floaters and trying to finish over guys. I'm not that concerned, mostly because throughout his career he's shot like in the 40s in that area, but for what it's worth so far, he's had a tough time finishing there. Obviously, he still has a lot of value, but yeah. Now let's get to the Blazers, a team that I feel wrong on for several different reasons already. Now, I did not think they would be good. I'm pretty sure in my video for them I said they'll be fun, but they'll also be a lottery team. More so, they've looked different than I thought they would so far. Granted, Simons has been out for most of the games. For one, DeAndre Ayton finally got some shot attempts against the Pistons, so that's nice. I was one of Ayton's biggest fans around the time he got traded, and so far, I mean, it's just got to be more Ayton. And that's a team thing, that's a him thing, that's everything. Which already sounds like exactly what we were doing in Phoenix, but at least in Phoenix, he was getting more shots than it's been in Portland so far before the Pistons game. I was concerned that Shaedon Sharpe would not get as many shot attempts as you really wanted him to get, and so far that has not been a problem at all. Shaedon has been getting a lot of shots up. I mean, sure, he's not leading them in touches per game, but within the flow of the offense, he's getting his shots, man. He's still getting pick and roll and handoff opportunities that allow him to get into like his pull-ups and everything. They are running like some corner actions for him, just come around the screen and make the next thing happen. He's had some backdoor cuts, and obviously he's super athletic, so he can catch lobs in that situation. And I think the most subtle thing about Shaedon that's really effective is how quick he is when attacking off the catch, where, like, you know, some guys have to like pump fake and then kind of telegraph what they're going to do. But with Shaedon, it seems like it's in like one fluid motion a lot of the time. The first couple games, Scoot's passing was like pretty rough. Like, he was making it obvious when he was like trying to throw it to the corner. Defenders were tipping those passes. He would make some contested passes in the lane that were rough, leading to turnovers. But he was making some better reads, like in their last one against the Pistons, where, catch and drive, find Ayton on the lob, alley-oop to him on the first second of the game, pretty much. Find him on a bounce pass on the pick and roll and stuff. So, like, okay, that's cool. Unfortunately, he's now got an ankle injury. Simons has not played besides their first game, and Malcolm Brogdon is going to get these shots up. Go to the Kings, whose defense has been perhaps encouraging overall, but also a little up and down because they've had like one really good defensive game against the Warriors and then one not so good one. In the good one, which was the recent one, even though they still lost, you had like multiple doubles on Steph where like Davion Mitchell was able to then like steal a pass meant for maybe like Wiggins or something off of a screen, with Kevin Huerter switching like pretty aggressively onto Steph, or like Keegan Murray pressuring Steph really hard, or Davion drawing charges on Klay where he's the help guy, like as Klay's driving to the rim. Vezenkov, when he's been able to get minutes, it's pretty much been exactly what you thought it would be. It's relocations, it's just random flow of offense into his super quick release with his height. Like, I know that that's just sort of a general description, but that's exactly what it is so far. De'Aaron Fox is still making what feels like every single paint jump shot he attempts, like those jumpers around the free throw line. His shiftiness is, of course, always there. The Kings, their handoff actions with Sabonis is always there. Keegan is shooting more. It does feel like Keegan is getting a little more of his shot attempts off of like flowing into a handoff action as opposed to just catch and shoots. It does seem like he's also been getting into his pull-up too a little bit more. I know his percentages have not been great to open up the season, but I'm not really concerned given how good of a shooter he was last year. And I do think like it's clear that he's getting a few more opportunities as opposed to just relocate off of stuff that's created for you. As for Houston, I think the most fun thing to look at right now with them is the Fred Şengün two-man game. Granted, some of that's going to be dictated by how often Fred is making his pull-ups and everything, but the bounce passes from Fred to Şengün, just getting him on the move, and then from there around the paint, he can either like get into a floater or go to his array of post moves or make the next play for like Jalen or Jabari or Brooks. It's pretty good stuff. Now, I do think Jabari has had a good amount of shots created for him out of this, and I mean, we're just going to see. Like, I think this is going to be the year he gets more open shots created for him, but also Udoka is encouraging Jabari to be part of the offense a little more, even if it's just like, hey, flow into a handoff action from Şengün, and then from there, if you got an opportunity, we might rescreen for you, that sort of thing. As far as Jalen, so I remember at the beginning of the year, Udoka said that he wanted to use Jalen Green a little bit more off ball, and okay, his touches are not like drastically down from last season, but there are slight differences where like his average seconds per touch or average dribbles per touch are slightly down, and I do think that mostly reflects when I'm just watching them in when he's involved in an off-ball set, it's more of like a specific thing as opposed to last year's offense where it was just kind of like, we got to figure something out, right? And like the obvious thing to think about there is like, yeah, a handoff action with Şengün, which can then go into like a pull-up jumper as opposed to dribble for 12 seconds and then I guess we'll run a pick and roll, It does feel like he is running across pin down starting from the corner a little bit more often this year. And with Jalen, I mean, look, he's always going to be a shifty athlete who can make shots. If you want him making those split-second reads, like, yeah, it's going to be inconsistent. And also that game against the Warriors where Steph just went crazy on like 4 straight threes, that was tough. As far as Amen, I will say it's probably been more jump shots than you would like to see so far. I mean, it's cool that he's not scared to take them. It's just, we know why he was drafted. It's downhill potential, crazy athleticism, very quick first step, make plays for guys. But, it's tough being a rookie point guard, especially on a team that is not giving you the keys to everything. And I mean, I think that's fine that the Rockets are treating it like that with him. And he just sprained his ankle, so that's rough. It's going to be a minute till we see Amen again. Now we go to the Jazz. I don't want to take too long on this one. Look, still love Lauri Markkanen's corner actions that Will Hardy started last year. Still love when Markkanen's screening on the ball. Shout out to John Collins. Walker Kessler had a kind of slow start to the season, weird body language stuff. I'm not that concerned, but, it's a thing you got to acknowledge. I think Keontae has been pretty encouraging. So they've been giving him minutes right away. And some of these passes that he's pulled off, like on the pick and roll with Markkanen, it is encouraging. I mean, he's coming around these screens and he's like freezing the defense for a second And you can tell he's like taking that extra step to the side to like give Markkanen just enough room to roll. And then he's hitting him with a bounce pass on the move and everything. I mean, Keontae's also been not shy to shoot the ball, whether it's like transition pull-ups or, like a pump fake and then 1 or 2 dribbles to his side into his three, or he'll like relocate from the corner to the wing, catch it and then drive and then make the next play, whether it's a shot for himself or, quick pass around the rim. Like, it's been pretty encouraging with Keontae so far. I don't think the Jazz are going to give him all the keys, which I think is also fine.